Hey everyone, welcome to Linux Foundry. This is our very first video, and I'm really excited to kick things off with you. Today we're starting a brand new series, Linux for Beginners. This is a beginner-friendly series. We're starting from zero, so if you've never touched Linux before, you're exactly who this is for. Alright, let's find out what Linux is all about. So first up, why are we even doing this series? Why learn Linux at all? The first reason is command line fluency. You're going to learn the actual Linux commands and shell scripting patterns that people use every single day on the job. Second, this sets you up for test automation. Shell scripting is the backbone of most automation and CI/CD pipelines, so this knowledge transfers directly. Third, it's a foundation for embedded and DevOps work. The same skills carry straight into embedded Linux, servers, and cloud infrastructure. And finally, this is built for beginners. No prior experience assumed. We're starting from zero and building up together. Here's a quick look at what we'll cover across this series. 6 building blocks, and each one sets up the next. First, we'll get an overview of the Linux system itself. That's actually what this video is all about. Then we'll look at user interfaces. After that, shell usage. Then basic commands. The visual editor, Vim. And finally, shell scripting, which ties everything together. Before we type a single command, it helps to know what Linux actually is, where the idea came from, how it's put together, and why it quietly runs most of the modern world. It all started in 1991 when a university student in Finland released the very first Linux kernel. Its license, the GPL, guarantees that anyone can use, study, modify, and share it. And today, Linux is everywhere, from phones and laptops to the servers running the internet. Let's back up for a second. Strip away the operating system, and a computer is just silicon that can't talk to anything. So what's the gap it actually fills? Many programs, one CPU. Something has to decide who runs next. A dozen different devices, one keystroke. Something has to route it correctly. One buggy app shouldn't crash the whole machine. Something has to keep them apart. And every laptop's hardware is different. Apps shouldn't have to care. That something is the operating system, and Linux is one of the most battle-tested examples of it. So, strictly speaking, what is Linux? Technically, Linux is a kernel, the engine room of an operating system. Pair it with the right tools and you get a full working system. It started in 1991 as a personal project by a Finnish student, Linus Torvalds. It's licensed under the GPL, so anyone can read, modify, and redistribute it. It's paired with GNU tools to form a complete OS, often called GNU/Linux. And today, it's the invisible engine behind Android, cloud servers, and most of the web. Linux didn't just appear overnight. It grew out of a decade-long push for software freedom. Let's walk through the timeline. In 1983, Richard Stallman launches the GNU project, aiming for a fully free Unix-like system. In 1985, the Free Software Foundation forms to fund GNU and defend user freedoms. In 1991, Linus Torvalds, a student in Finland, releases the first Linux kernel. And in 1992, Linux is relicensed under the GPL and merges with GNU tools into a full operating system. Open source isn't about price, it's about what you're allowed to do with the software, and that comes down to 4 freedoms. Run, use the software for any purpose, on any machine, no permission needed. Study, open access to the source, shows you exactly how it works under the hood. Modify, change it, fix it, adapt it to fit your own workflow. And share. Redistribute the original or your own modified version. Now let's zoom into the actual structure of a Linux system. There are 4 layers and 1 strict boundary, and that boundary is what keeps Linux stable. At the top, we have applications, browsers, editors, games, the programs you actually run. This lives in user space. Below that, system libraries, the GNU-C library and tools that apps use to reach the kernel. Still user space. Then the kernel. It manages processes, memory, devices, and the file system. This is kernel space. And at the very bottom, the hardware, CPU, memory, disk, and network, the physical machine itself. So what actually makes Linux so powerful? 4 core traits explain why it scales from a wristwatch all the way up to a supercomputer. Multitasking. It juggles many running programs across one or many CPU cores at once. Multi-user. Different accounts, different privilege levels, all on one safely shared machine. Memory protection, a hard wall between user space and kernel space, stops one crash from taking down everything. And a hierarchical file system. Every file and device lives in one predictable tree, starting at the root /. One last thing before we wrap up. You've probably heard terms like Ubuntu or Fedora thrown around. These are called distributions, and it's the same kernel underneath. Each one just packages it differently for a different job. Ubuntu, friendly defaults that make it a common first stop for beginners. Debian, slow, careful releases that many other distributions build on top of. Fedora, ships newer software first, a favorite testing ground for developers. CentOS and RHEL, long support cycles, built for corporate servers and data centers. Arch Linux, nothing pre-installed, you assemble the system piece by piece. And Kali Linux comes loaded with tools for security testing and ethical hacking. And that's a wrap for our very first video. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this. I hope this gave you a solid picture of what Linux actually is.